Do you want to know how to discipline an autistic child in the classroom? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. The point of this video is to help teachers and aides develop some discipline and structured ways to help autistic children with their behavioral issues and to thrive in the classroom. Autism needs structure, not chaos. So when we're talking about what really makes a great environment for an autistic student, it's all about the structure. When things change from the structure, that is very unsettling to the majority of autistic people. They like predictability, they like to know where they fit into things, they like to know where they can thrive. They want the organization to be there. Now, I know not all teachers are hardwired for extreme organization, and so sometimes that can be a little bit rough, but especially when it comes to how you're going to communicate with each other, if you can keep the organization there, all the better. Now, obviously, classroom schedules, those types of things are going to also be a lot more helpful to an autistic child if you actually stick to them. Sometimes if you don't, they're going to be trying to tell you that you're doing things wrong because they noticed that you didn't keep to the schedule. Maybe you've already recognized that. But let's talk a little bit about these behaviors and autism. Because autistic children have a tendency to be a little bit more anxious and a little bit more chatty about that anxiety that's happening, then sometimes the behavioral level in the classroom can really go down fast. When one person starts getting worried and starts chatting to others, then soon everybody else can start having chatting problems. So this can then create a problem. Sometimes also autistic children can get angry really fast, almost seeming like without warning, because the anxiety will just spike really quick when they feel like something is supposed to go another way, or if they don't feel like they're understood. Sometimes autistic children can monopolize conversations that happen in classrooms, can sometimes even interrupt during presentations or lessons that are being given. And so pre-teaching a child how to prepare for a classroom setting is going to be vital for the success for that autistic student. So first, let's talk about interruptions. What can we do there? Because that's probably going to be a pretty common one that will happen in the classroom. Oftentimes when they're interrupting, it's just the little anxiety bubbles that are coming out. So it's not as if that autistic child is trying to be controlling. They're just trying to bring everything back to where they feel comfortable. If you miss something or say something that they feel like doesn't match the information that they already have, then they sometimes just blurt out that bit of information. So they need to know that those are no answers. Whenever they feel like they need to say something, that's a no answer. So you're probably going to want to teach the skills of self-government. One of those 4 basic skills of self-government is how to accept a no answer. This classroom set is vital for learning the skills and principles of self-government for children especially. These books each teach one of the 4 basic skills of self-government, like how to follow instructions, accept no answers and criticism, accept consequences, and disagree appropriately, which autistic children thrive learning these skills because they're predictable. And if everybody understands them, then they can communicate effectively and not feel like they're getting negative attention for that communication. One skill that they're going to need for controlling interrupting is this one here. Porter Earns a Quarter teaches the skill accepting no answers. They need to know where those boundary lines are and how to not cross over them. So that they need to learn how to recognize the boundary line. So look at the situation, keep a calm face, voice, and body. So do a little bit of self-analysis and then say, okay, that's the boundary line. I can't cross over it. Or they could disagree appropriately, which is in this book here. Paige takes the stage. But then they drop the subject. and they say, okay, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to drop the subject. I'm going to wait until it's the right time. Learning timing is key for a person who has higher levels of anxiety and anxiousness. Okay, so let's talk about that chatty behavior that can be happening in the classroom a lot. When a student is anxious about something or they get excited about something, especially autistic students have a tendency to get a little bit more verbal, and they'll start talking to other people around them, distracting other people in the class. Sometimes autistic students are quite smart, and so they get done with their classwork early too, which then leads to them being a little bit more conversational and chatty with other people. So making a plan ahead of time for how to handle those circumstances could be key. So if you plan for what to do when they are done with their work ahead of time, that's going to help them be successful if they feel like they have a go-to plan, something that they can look forward to. Also, if you talk to them about the boundary line with talking during class or getting chatty like that, that's also a no answer. So if they know that that chatting line is a line that they don't cross over, then they can also know that when they do cross over that you'll have to correct them and point them back on track. So what do they need to do? They need to give themselves an instruction. That goes back to one of those other 4 basic skills, which is following instructions. They need to give themselves an instruction for thinking about something else, focusing in on something else. Sometimes the autistic student has a hard time getting out of that loop of over-processing on whatever that one feeling is or whatever that one issue. So initially they give themselves a no answer. They drop the subject because that's one of the steps for accepting a no answer. Then they give themselves an instruction of what to focus on, and then they focus in and stay connected in that way. So they can learn how to self-direct like that. It does take practice. It takes some deliberate planning ahead of time and some pre-teaching on a daily basis, sometimes even on a project-by-project basis. You'll need to pre-teach them about what type of frame of mind to get into a little bit before it becomes automatic. Give them a little bit of time, maybe a couple weeks, until they can adjust to this new way of thinking. Sometimes autistic students don't want to join activities. And maybe you're okay with that. If that's fine with you, then, I suppose you can give them the opportunity to not join an activity. But oftentimes when working with someone with autism, if you just allow them to have the new experience, they find out they're actually okay, and they don't need to give into that anxiety about the new experience anymore. Now, it is true that they're very rigid in their thinking, and if they feel like they've had a bad experience before in a project or an experience that's similar to what you're suggesting, they may just completely shut down. And at that point, you're probably going to have to work them through some calming strategies. So hopefully you have created a calm plan for them. So I have an entire training on my website. So my website is the teachingselfgovernment.com website. On that website in the store, there is an entire training for schools and for teachers and classrooms called the Teaching Self-Government Skills for Success Classroom Discipline and Behavioral Framework. If you look at that, you could take that training. In fact, your school may reimburse you for the training. They may even pay for it for the teachers. That type of training could be instrumental. It talks about how to create the calm plans, how to teach the skills that I'm talking about, and how to be successful when those youth go completely out of control. Now, this is not just for autistic youth, but these successful skills and strategies are actually for neurotypical children as well. So you can use it for everyone in your classroom, but you'll be fully equipped to handle those autistic students. So let's talk about the anger. That's probably the most difficult one, especially because oftentimes it seems to come out of nowhere. Usually there's just some frustration on the part of the student. That autistic student has an expectation for themselves. They don't meet the expectation, and then suddenly that student is getting angry, and it might not be at you, it might be at themselves. Sometimes they have a tendency to get angry at other students very easily as well, and this is because other students will step over boundaries that they're not okay with. Maybe it's closeness boundaries, social boundaries. Maybe the student is saying something that is wrong, and the autistic student feels like they know the right answer to that, and so they're trying to correct the other student that won't be corrected, and this can develop increased frustration. Again, all these things go back to being able to accept a no answer, because we can't control each other. If somebody says something that we don't agree with, we just have to say, that's just a no answer. I can disagree appropriately with them, which is a good classroom skill for them to learn how to do with each other. if the other person won't see my side, I just have to say, well, okay. I mean, it's just a no. They don't understand it, and I have to drop the subject. Dropping the subject is probably that hardest part. But if they're starting to go out of control and get angry, I highly recommend having a trigger phrase. So something that you might say to them, something like calmness, or take a deep breath, use your calm plan, something like that that helps them get back on track. And everybody understands the same type of language because you would use it for everyone, not just the person who's the autistic person. But if you have a cue phrase for them, that could pull them on track really fast when they start going to the wrong part of their brain. If that doesn't work, you're going to need to do a proper correction to help them choose to go to front brain instead of that mid and back brain that might be so automatic for them with those deeply rooted habits that they have inside their brain for their processing of emotions. Take that training because it's got the scripts that you need in it. It's going to help you learn how to communicate with your students so that you can actually be successful. When you have a script, this means you're going to say the same words just about every time. I mean, each situation is going to be unique and different, but you're going to refer them back when you're teaching or correcting any situation. You're going to refer back to the steps on the script for how to do a correction and the steps in the skill that they're needing. So you focus on one of the steps that they already know, and then you focus on going through the proper steps of the correction skill. By the time you do this a few times with your autistic student, they will know the steps to that skill. They'll know exactly what's coming. This will give them a lot of peace, even if sometimes they don't want to be corrected. They should be less anxious because they understand your class formula. Now, when it comes to consequences for autistic children, you want to be really predictable as well. So having something like a classroom chore or something like that is probably going to be better than changing up consequences all the time based upon what you feel in the day. So there's recommendations for picking good consequences on the training for the skills for success. So go to teachingselfgovernment.com, get the Teaching Self-Government Skills for Success program for your classroom so you can have the confidence and the skills that you need. There's a newsletter there that you can sign up for. There's a lot of resources that can be beneficial, those children's books, all kinds of things. So go check it out. I'll see you there.